Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for OPE, let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who wanna go, gonna glow.
Aloha, and welcome back to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast, the podcast where Joe and I are enjoying the bye week. The rival teams seem to be on some sort of voodoo bullshit streak, and my daughter is fighting with every ounce of her energy to stay awake in the middle of the. Well, it's not. It looks dark, but it's 6:50. Joe, how's bye week been going for you so far?
Oh, a little bit up, a little bit down. I did. Now it's. I hate saying this term because it sounds so ridiculous, but skeeting. I've been testing out the new Blue Sky, and I skeeted out today. That it was pretty nice not having to stress over a football game today. I could just sit here and not have to worry about my team playing. But other than that, just trying to make it through the week.
Yep. Every week is another one. Last week was an adventure in and of its own for exterior, interior reasons, but we're back talking football again. And as I said, we'll get into our fresh, stale, and moldy for the Packers. But today was if you're standings watching for with the intent of the Packers, like we said, the NFC North is completely out of their hands at this point after the two eggs they've laid in their two division games so far this season. But like I said, this could go into one of the topics, but I want to know how many live chickens these two teams have sacrificed, what voodoo equipment they have purported and utilized in their nefarious means to grab and maintain their positioning atop the division, because my oh my, did they get all kinds of stupid out of their opponents for large parts of their games that helped them remain at remain with 1 and 2 losses respectively for the Lions and Vikings. But overall, we're going internal this week. Packers are on their bye, so this show is going to focus on both what has been and what we're hoping will be for the rest of the Packers season. But Joe, kick us off. What is your freshest thing, either so far or coming up, you hope coming for the Packers this season?
I guess the first thing's got to be that the big fear was we were going to miss something with the replacement of Aaron Jones with Josh Jacobs, but really I think it's been a boon more than it's been a struggle. I mean, yeah, it didn't look good in week 1, but I think nobody really looked good in week 1 in Brazil. But for him to come out and be the real what's the term, bell cow for the offense, that's something LaFleur's been wanting for a while, and that's no disrespect to Aaron Jones. I'm one of the biggest Aaron Jones supporters you want to know. It's just he did not have the body type and the build to be able to handle what Josh Jacobs has been able to handle so far. And I did catch just a little bit of the Vikings game today, which was a fucking cluster of a cluster. And, he got hit and it just hit him wrong and he was down again. Now, I don't know if he went back in. I don't know if what was going on with him, but that was the issue that we had with him, was that just taking a hit, you were worried he was going to be out for a long period of time, whereas Josh Jacobs, when he gets hit, you're not as worried because you can tell he can handle it.
Yep. And as of right now, they're saying that he did apparently return, but he had to get x-rays and stuff like that. And yeah, not to bag on Jones, more to look at the positive. What Jacobs has brought to the table. Too many J's in the names. Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute, which one? But yeah, so more to focus on, like you said, what Jacobs has brought to the table, and just being that guy that, you, like you said, you can just turn around and hand him the ball 30 times. Luckily, they haven't had to do that very often this season. They've only had to really run him into the ground. Really, Indiana, like you said, this is the NFL, not basketball. Indianapolis game is the only time that it was like, oh, let's just put the game on his back and let him run with it. I know he had 25 carries against Jacksonville, but other than that, they have limited his touches. Similar idea. You want him fresh for the stretch run, just like Jones, but like you said, just a sturdier package that is along for the ride at this point. And yeah, there were some concerns about like, oh, is he this? Is he that? I will say that at times you maybe see the loss, the difference in explosiveness between the two, between what Jones would have given you, that little bit of extra wiggle, that little bit of extra juice to create explosive plays. But it goes without saying that Josh Jacobs probably has, like 150 or 200 yards of rushing that are just gone because of, numerous holding penalties on the offense. So it's honestly, it's worked out as well as they could have hoped. I know that the ideal would have been for both Jacobs and Jones to be in Green Bay, and that obviously didn't work out the way that the front office had hoped it would. But all in all, it's worked out best for the Packers. It's worked out as good as it can for the Packers, and for the people that are like, oh, like he went to the Vikings. Aaron Jones is not the reason the Vikings are, what are they, 6-2 or whatever the hell they are at this point. Like I said, it's more voodoo Bayou magic at this point than it is the fact that Aaron Jones is on their roster. So yeah.
Well, just look at today's game. What was it? It was 12-7 was the victory.
Yeah.
They only scored 12 points against Jacksonville, and Jacksonville was on their backup quarterback.
Yep. I saw a tweet that was it's these two like track sprinters, and they're like, the caption was Sam Darnold and Jared Goff trying to catch Jordan Love for the interception lead while Packers are on their bye, and it's the two runners falling over themselves to cross the finish line. But I mean, yeah, like we said, keeping this Packers centric, I don't think Green Bay could have hoped to get anything more out of Jacobs at this point. He's one fumble into the end zone from having an even better stat line, and he has not cost the Packers. It has not been like the differential between Aaron Jones to Jacobs is nowhere near the reason that they are, they have 3 losses. If anything, he's the reason that they have 2 fewer losses than they could, at this point, given how the season has played out, who dependent on who is on the roster. So, like you said, it's been a boon. We wish obviously Jones could still be here, but that's how this league works. Nothing is permanent, and time marches on waiting for no one.
Right, and stat-wise, there's not much difference than what Jones. I'm looking at a stat line right here. Jacobs, 9 games started, 158 attempts, 762 yards, but only 3 touchdowns. But like you said, it should be more, but penalties and everything else. But he's still averaging 4.8. Now we know Jones's mythical figure was always he would always seem to average about 5 yards a carry. That's only 0.2% off, or 0.2 off of what that 5.0 figure. So there's not really a loss there.
And they're just totally different runners. And actually, on that front too, Jones was, he was well over 5 yards a carry earlier in the season, but now he's only at 4.6. So that's taken a decline in the past few weeks, compared to where the two were really when the Packers and the Vikings played each other. So, like I said, can't complain. It's a vibes and a feel thing that people are complaining about at this point, but what Jacobs has given the team this season, especially with the Love injury, needing to have Malik Willis start games, can't complain at what Josh Jacobs has given you. My fresh is gonna have to be just how the Halfley experience has gone overall. I know, it was a little bit of a disappointment going into the bye, but he had one hand handcuffed to a drainage pipe because of the injuries that he was dealing with. to Jair, to Evan Williams, and it forced a shuffled secondary and couldn't have all the pieces he wanted out there the way he'd like to. But you're seeing a much more aggressive approach on a down to down basis. You're seeing this team try to dictate terms to its opponent. Basically, all the things that we complained about that Barry, I don't like to use the word never because never is almost never true in sports terms, but it really did feel like whenever you needed some sort of curveball or changeup just to throw an opposing team off, Barry was just completely unwilling to do it, and it cost the Packers, whether it was losses to better teams or just making games against inferior opponents much more difficult than it had to be. And it's just a breath of fresh air to see Hafley bring in this system that is about attacking, forcing the opponent to play on your terms. When that's the thing that we've said all along is we watch the Packers offense run into these really good defenses in the playoffs, and it's like, oh, it would be really nice to have a defense that tried to do that. We know that it's hard to replicate that when other teams are built to be defensive teams, but we always just kind of said, like, we'd like to see the Packers attempt to do that, and Hafley has not just attempted to do it, but I think for the most part succeeded so far this season in that regard.
It is. It's like night versus day compared to what we've had with Barry, and even to a certain point, Patton. I know the big complaint everybody's going to make is, oh, well, the sacks aren't there. The sacks aren't there. Well, there's reasons for that, and people just don't want to see those reasons. They just want, we want results now. Reason number one, it's a new system for everybody. At one point, a lot of these guys did play in, a 4-3 or whatever, but they had to convert to a 3-4, when they came to Green Bay. This is the first time the Packers have played a 4-3 defense since the early 2000s.
Yep.
Maybe the Sherman era of Green Bay Packers.
2008, basically, yeah.
Yeah, so, that's, 16 years already that they've run a 3-4 style defense of some kind or another. So, it's getting back used to a 4-3 defense over a 3-4 defense. Guys,
I think, just to go on that point, I think the average fan just doesn't comprehend how different it is to view the game from a 2-point stance where you're standing up and you're like, how you survey the field from basically a standing position to when you're down in a 3-point stance and you're at hip level with everyone. Like the way that it's a literal difference in how you view the game, and because of that, like you said, it's just totally different on how you play. And not that this is any sort of linear correlation or anything like that, but what did we hear from Preston Smith from the moment he was traded to when he got to Pittsburgh? He's like, hey, look, I'm at the point in my career, I'm a better 3-4 player. I tried to make it work out, but the opportunities that it wasn't working out the way I'd hoped to. And I did ask, and I appreciate that Preston was honest and was like, hey, I'd like to go back to a 3-4 team where I'm going to be more effective. And what does he do? I know he was playing limited snaps and stuff, but he goes out and has a sack against the Redskins today. And, not that, like I said, not that that's the one size fits all or anything like that, but it was going to take a time for all these guys to reprogram. And what you're hoping for is that coming out of the bye, that helps accelerate that process.
Right. And, I didn't know about the Preston sack today. Like I said, I kind of took this day off for the most part from watching football. They did have the Chiefs game on, and that was a fucking cluster too.
That's another doodle.
Yeah, and like I said, they had the Viking Jaguar game, and I just kind of flipped back and forth, but I didn't really pay attention to it too much. But that's what I said from the start with him. When the rumors that they had him on the block. Now, I'm glad it was a mutual thing, not like a Razul where it just kind of came out of nowhere and that kind of stuff. But I'm happy to hear it was a mutual thing, that there's no reason for either side to hate each other. But I can understand it. Preston wants to be able to get what left of his career he can.
Yeah.
and the
On
best
his
place for
current contract. Yeah, exactly.
right,
And he's got to produce to keep that contract.
right. So the best place for him to go is a 3-4 team, and of course Pittsburgh's going to get every ounce of him out of him that they can, and he's going to have more success because he's got other guys he can rotate in with over there. You know, T.J. Watts and the likes. So, you know, that's great. But the other reason why the numbers aren't there is, how do I want to put this? It's I want to say it's more of a scheme thing, because it's not really a more, well, we want sack after sack after sack after sack. It's more of, we're going to put pressure on so you make a mistake so our back end can make the plays. Now, in a way it works because they are still collapsing the pocket. They are still putting pressure on the quarterbacks. What is it? They were at one point, they were at the top of the NFL for takeaways, weren't they? Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's more of what Halfley's system is, because he is more of a defensive back style coach. Now, yes, I agree. We need to see more from our high money guys like Rashawn and Kenny, and you want to see more out of guys like Lucas. But, and I know I've said this for a long time now, and I know I'm going to sound biased because, oh, well, you're from Iowa and you're going to say everything Lucas does is, but he's in the first half of his second year in the league. I get you didn't want him to be picked by the Packers. I get it. You guys didn't want him as a Packer. You wanted the flashy name and like Will McDonald or whatever. There's a big difference between how Lucas has been handled in Green Bay and Will McDonald's been handled in New York. McDonald was thrown out there and said, you're going to get as many snaps as we can give you because we have nobody else to give them to. Lucas was brought in and said, we're going to rotate you. We're going to slowly bring you along because we have Preston, we have Rashawn, we have all these other guys at the edge position. So we don't have to force you into anything. You just do what you can when you can. Well, now with Preston gone, you're going to see him get more snaps. You're going to see probably a Cox get more snaps. You're going to see a Mosby get more snaps. And snaps. You can tell where my mind is right now. Speaking of, I'm gonna break this, since I kind of, if you're ever in Ottumwa, Iowa, go to Main Street Donuts. That place is the best place in town for anything. Yesterday I went over there and got me some pumpkin bars from them, and they were pumpkin bars with cream cheese frosting. Oh my God, that's just heaven. Okay, back to thought. So, it's one of those things that now that they've, I don't want to use the word cull because it's another, it makes it sound bad, but now that they've lightened the room up a little bit and gotten, fewer guys to rotate in, these guys should be able to get more snaps, and you should be able to see more out of them. Maybe we'll see more of Rashawn and Lucas together on the field. We'll see a Mosby and a Rashawn and a Cox and Lucas out on the field, and you should be able to see more things out of them. But it's a whole cohesion thing. I said it last week that it kind of makes sense that we're seeing the edges do their job, where they're wrapping around and pushing the quarterback up in the pocket to where the defensive tackle should be able to be making plays, and the defensive tackles aren't making their plays. So it's kind of a whole thing, but I know I just went on a whole ramble that included snacks. So
No, I agree. And I think Kenny does look like he's ramping up. I've always felt he's been a little bit of a slower starter as the season goes. And he's another guy, we talked about getting used to this new system. And you can see it if you're just, if you're not being super biased or overly disappointed for no reason. There's a guy who, for his whole career, has been, okay, I'm going to take on double team. I'm going to read it. I'm going to play it. I'm going to play strong and stout. I'm going to split it, and then I'm going to make a play. This year, it's like Kenny, you get to push the gas pedal down and go. And you saw so many plays where he's like, "Oh my god, I get to do things I've never done before in the NFL. I get to shoot a gap, I can hop over a gap, and I get to oh shit, there goes the player. Oh damn it, I ran right by the ball carrier," kind of thing. And it's it's that whole like when you get behind your first sports car and it's like, yeah, it's great to have all the horsepower under the hood, but you got to know when and where to use that horsepower. You can't just floor the damn thing at every straight. And I do think we've seen Kenny do that. We've seen him get more stops in recent weeks, just and even plays where he's disrupting in the backfield. It's not just like, oh, it's just two ships passing in the night. He is throttling down and forcing a redirection that allows someone else to come and make the play. And I think the next key in Halfley's, not his development, but just these guys making sure that, because I think, so backing up, I think overall you can tell that Halfley's a good teacher because the stuff that he's been able to call, the more exotic looking pressures and things like that, you see it happen, and it's all this like well orchestrated, controlled chaos kind of stuff, and you can't get there without good coaching, good classroom whiteboard teaching. And the next step that you want to see is these guys just be a little more disciplined in their play. A lot of the big runs that are broken is because one guy is off a gap. The Gibbs touchdown, and no one knows who it was, but it's one of Edge Cooper or Xavier McKinney jumped the wrong gap on that fourth down play against the Lions, and it leads to a walk-in touchdown for Jameer Gibbs. And it's those kind of plays, different points of the game where it's like, oh, some running back will, bust one for 20 plus or something like that. And you go and watch the all 22 and it's like, all right, it's that one, someone wasn't where he's supposed to be. And those are the ones where I don't want to say I expect them to get fixed, but I'm really hopeful that they will, because the progression we've seen on defense, we've seen them make the splash plays, and we've seen them overall just be more efficient at stopping offenses on a down-to-down basis. And now it's, can these guys that definitely are talented, you had different points of the season, it's like maybe they're not talented, maybe it goes through that every year where everyone gets down on the side of the ball at some point because team isn't perfect and stuff like that. But you do see the athleticism, you see the playmaking skills on all three levels of the defense. And it's like, this bye week, this is where you hope that there is, not the big light switch, but there is like at least a preliminary one where everyone looks a little bit more settled, a little more, I don't want to say necessarily at ease, but they're just more in tune with what their assignments. And that's the next step in the progression that I want to see them make. Because if you get that, especially with you coming out against Chicago and then Chicago, San Fran, and then Miami, that's three teams you've got to be assignment sure against. Because I know some people are like, oh, Chicago, but it's like, look, you're facing off against a rookie quarterback who's losing confidence because the last 3 weeks, that often, like, Caleb hasn't been good, but they have just all around him been shitty too. So you just don't want to give them any free passes. The 49ers, you got to be assignment sure because they're going to throw the kitchen sink at you. Shanahan's going to scheme up all kinds of bullshit to throw at you. And then with Miami, you just have to be so disciplined because it's like you have a team that just wants to go deep on you with Waddle and Tyreek Hill. And so you just got to make sure that you're playing disciplined in your defensive assignments there to not let any free runners go by you. So just that continued improvement. And that's why I have the defense in my fresh, because we've seen them just steadily improve as this season has gone. And the hope is that you can continue to get that kind of improvement out of this group as the season goes along. And they're trending to be like a top 12, top 10 unit. And as long as they're giving you that, this team was always supposed to be an offensive leaning team. And if you get a top 10, top 12 defense, this should be a deep playoff run roster that you have on your hands as a Packers.
For sure. And, that's better than a bottom 30, defense that we've had for the last couple of years. So,
Yeah.
that would be great to have. So, I'm trying to think. I'm going to say it, and I know it can be placed into a stale too, but I'm going to lump two of them together and say the emergence of Romeo Dobbs and Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed definitely looks like, I know there was the big talk of number one receiver, number one receiver. I think you'd have to split the job between Romeo and Jaden, because with Jordan Love, those seem to be his two safety valves. And anytime he gets in trouble, those are the two guys he's really looking for. And that's not to say anything about Tucker. And I'm sure that one will be, Tucker will be something you'll talk about here in a few minutes or whatever. But, Jaden has been that gadget guy that our offense has been looking for since they drafted Randall Cobb in 2011. And I think he is a tremendously better version of Cobb. And again, that's not a slight against Cobb. I like Cobb. He just was never what they truly hoped for in a weapon. But, Jaden can be the end around guy. He can be the touch pass guy. He can be the deep threat. He can be a slot receiver. He can pretty much be whatever you want him to be out on the field, and he'll do it and successfully. And then Romeo, I know we had the one little hiccup with him and the issue that nobody even is still sure of what happened with it. And everybody should just shut up about it because it's none of their fucking business anyway. But when he's in there, he seems to be the number 1A or B or whatever you want to put it target of Jordan Love. So, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was going to say, like, to that degree, he's missed the game, and he's only 2 targets behind Jaden Reed. And that's with Jaden Reed getting all those little, like, we call them, like, faux jet sweeps, where it's the one where they're in shotgun and Love pushes the ball forward towards him, and it counts as a target. Yeah, the touch pass, because it's, it's a forward pass kind of thing and stuff. So, he's got, like, a half dozen of those on the season, and like I said, he's at 47 targets, Dobbs is at 45, and Dobbs missed the game. So, it just, like you said, it goes to show who's who. And I do think that, to that degree, to build off of it, I think Watson is doing a good job at taking what's so far been available to him. I think he's the guy that has been most hurt by Love's injury issues and, inconsistent play so far this season, because unfortunately, Watson was never going to be featured in a Malik Willis offense, because his job is to just go out there and run deep and take the top off the defense and make them, respect something down the field. And you saw it like in the Arizona game where he catches that deep pass and stuff. And the nice thing with Watson is you've seen him do more just like receiver things as opposed to being like just go get open deep guy. You've seen him run more digs, hitches, the kind of like quote unquote meat and potato routes as opposed to just like specialized vertical routes. So that's good to see. And yeah, another fresh is just the breakout of Tucker Kraft. And it's been even more necessary because of the Love injury. Backups like to rely on tight ends because they're just such big targets, and Kraft is definitely one of those. And then on top of that, the Musgrave injury, you have these 2 guys that you drafted. They're both tight ends by name, but they don't play the same position. They're both very different players. And it's unfortunate that Musgrave is missing probably like 80% of this season, but it's just a boon that Kraft has really blossomed into a top 8-5 tight end. He's still got some consistency things to, the drop against Detroit cannot happen if you're going to be a top 3 to 5 player at the position. But just where he was last year to where he is now, it's just a great leap for a second-year player who some people were so down on early last season, which was just totally unnecessarily unfounded because, like I said, we both said it last year without fail. Like, there's a guy making a jump from FCS to NFL in a year, and he's not getting like the free touches. He's not the guy. It was Musgrave who's like that. LaFleur flat out said that, hey, like, we're going to do everything we have to put the ball in his hands. And Kraft, meanwhile, it's like you're not even going to necessarily get scraps off the end of the table. So it's just been such a boon for the Packers that Kraft has broken out that way. And you can just see that there's even more for him out there because he has some unfortunate drops in key situations. They've had some plays where he's been the target, but they've either fallen apart for a couple of reasons here and there. And his ascension goes hand in hand with Dobbs returning, Watson taking a step forward in his overall play, and Reed just being the effective because Reed isn't as effective if you don't have a Watson going deep, a Dobbs playing the perimeter wide receiver to suck, the top cornerback coverage, or Kraft pulling deep safety look and stuff like that. So it all is a it's all a symphony together, and you need all those pieces, and Reed is the one who's benefiting so far, and he probably kind of will be, because for all intents and purposes this is not a shot at Jaden Reed, but it's kind of also how you got like the Cobb 1200-yard season, is because Reed is a little different. He's a more athletic player than Cobb ever was, but it's like, okay, on this, on that 2014 offense, is like, we don't want Jordy Nelson to kill us, and he still killed most of the teams they played anyway. But it's like, we're gonna do so many things to try to take away Jordy Nelson, and also we don't want Eddie Lacy to just run all over us. And so Cobb just had the middle of the field wide open for his use. Same thing for this team, where especially with the addition of Jacobs, it's like we don't want the Packers to be able to just put the ball in someone's gut and run it 40 times for 4.5 yards a pop. And at the same time, you don't want Christian Watson beating you over the top with ease. You don't want Dobbs going for 15 yards. And and at the end of the day, and you don't want Tucker Kraft just running roughshod in the middle of your defense. And it's like, okay, who are we gonna, you there's very few defenses that can cover everything in the modern NFL. So what are you going to give up? Are you going to let 6'5", 250-pound tight end run roughshod in the middle of your defense? No, you're going to say someone will be able to ankle tackle the little 190-pound slot receiver. He's definitely won more than he's lost. He's dropped more than he should. But Reed has made the most of most his opportunities so far on the season. And just like Tucker, if he wants to take the mantle of being the team's top receiving option, like, yes, he's the most productive, but also he cannot be dropping a key third down here, a key, deep shot in the 2-minute drill there, slipping and falling down on a route here and stuff like that. Like, those are the parts where, some of them aren't totally in his control, but the stuff that's in his control, you can't, if you're a number one receiver, I know they drop passes, Devontae dropped passes, but you can't be dropping gimme first downs at key points of games and things like that. So, like you said, overall it's a fresh, but there's, even as fresh as Kraft, Reed, Dobbs breaking out in some form of the word, there's an even higher level they can all get to, because they've all missed some opportunities, and they're all plays that we kind of expect them to make. So they can clean that up. That's just another positive boon for this team. But I think, we can, unless you have anything that really stands out to you, you can start to move into our stale for the season so far.
Well, the only one that I have that probably should be talked about is Malik Willis. Without Malik, who knows what the Packers' record would be right now. And I wish I would have done a little bit more research and pulled out some of the receipts from the Malik Willis trade, and how many people were upset trading for Malik Willis and all that shit. And then he comes in, yeah, the Philly game, but again, that was a mess for everybody. He came in with under a minute to play, and had to try to drive the field and all that jazz. But then when he had to step in for the Indianapolis game, when he had to step in for the what's the other one, the Titans game, he looked amazing. Did his stats wow anybody? No, but they were good enough to get the victory, and he looked good enough playing quarterback that you were like, okay, hey, we might be okay here. So just, I got to give him a fresh, just because of what he's been able to do in a short amount of time.
Yeah, agree. And like you said, to the point where many, including us, were kind of debating, like, do you just sit Love that Detroit game before the bye? Because the fact that you can have the conversation, is a 70% Jordan Love really better than a 100% Malik Willis? The fact that you can have that conversation about a guy who got here 6 days before the beginning of the season is just absolutely bonkers. So yeah, it's an absolute fresh and one that needs to be recognized. So yeah, we'll definitely go there. And I guess, we'll go into our stale for the season so far, and I'll lead it off. The biggest stale that I've got so far is just the self-inflicted issues that this team has run into. And it's not like it's even one of those, the three games they've lost are due to, it's only happening in their losses. They should have two or three blowouts on the season that were not because Josh Jacobs fumbled the ball going into the end zone against Indianapolis. You have whatever the hell the end of the Jacksonville game was, where everyone just kind of went brain dead on both sides of the ball. The Even to an extent, the Houston game kind of had moments where you're like, they should be up more than they are and stuff, and you like had barely enough in the tank to go and get a game-winning kick out of that one. And so, and then you look at the three losses, and a lot of the inflicted mistakes in those are Jordan Love interceptions. Got to get better on those. But on top of that, you have penalties. The penalties have just absolutely torpedoed this team so often in the early parts of the season. And on top of that, you just look at where they stand, and like they're a good team overall. But if they want to take that step to being true title contenders, they've got to clean up a lot of the slop that they're dealing with, because you just can't. Even the best teams can't survive committing as many mental mistakes as they are. They're like bottom three, not bottom third, bottom three in the league in penalties per game, and just drop passes. I think they're like second worst or something like that. And you just can't continue to do that, especially if, you know, as much as I joke that this offense should be lean on the run more, even if Jordan is healthy. But if you're going to put the game in Jordan's hands, yes, Jordan's got to be better, but your receivers have to be better top to bottom. And it's not, I know Wicks is the guy that catches a lot of the flack, but Reed's dropped a handful of really key passes. Dobbs has a couple here and there. Watson's got not so much drops as just total misreads on passes. And then Kraft has a couple that you're kind of like, ugh, like what happened there? So I do think they're gonna, because this is kind of where they were last year, where it wasn't dropped so much as guys just weren't running the right routes, and we did see them in the middle part of the season as guys got more comfortable. You saw them just improve on the mental side of things and take off there. And to that degree, you just want to see it on the fundamental side of everything, getting your hand placement correctly, not getting your feet out of whack so you're exposed to a potential hold, or catching the ball, or not fumbling, or just knowing when if it's Jordan, just knowing when to take an L and just throw the ball out of bounds, like all those little things. And that's the beauty of having the bye now, is it's that time to go in and make these kind of tweaks and adjustments to, I don't want to necessarily say save the season, but this is really a mesh point of where it's the back half of their, so the back half of their schedule is tough. Like I said, you open at Chicago, home against San Fran, and then the short turnaround to Miami, but both of those are home games. Then you're at Detroit, at Seattle, home versus New Orleans, at Minnesota, home versus Chicago. So it's a tough stretch, but honestly, out of those games, really the Detroit and San Fran games are the two that you're like, ugh, like those are really tough games. Everything else, it's more of like it's a scheduling thing, or it is a division, it is a division game or whatever. So if you clean up a lot of this stuff, not that you should expect to go 6-2 or 7-1, but it's on the table for them, because this is a talented roster, and they really could be doing. It's not like they're just playing the wrong guy, or they're just don't get it kind of thing. It's a little thing here, a little thing there that would, it's a little improvement on the Packers end that would lead to a surmountable improvement in production on the field. So that's the stale. Because like I said, it would be moldy if they couldn't fix it, but because it's something that's not a major fix, it's a it's a tweak, it's a technical improvement that needs to be made. That's why I'm like, it's stale because it has to get fixed, and it's been a problem all year, kind of thing.
And to kind of do the flip side of yours, one of the guys that we talked about early on in the season about the penalties seems to have really kind of turned his shit around, and that's Rasheed Walker.
Yep.
You know, you're not really hearing him called for the penalties as much anymore as you were early on in the season. So that just shows you that it can be fixed. They just got to put the work in to fix it. Now, another thing with yours is I'm looking at the receiving stats here, and there are only 3 players that are over 60% success rate on their catches. Ben Sims, who has only caught 3 out of 4. Romeo, and he's at 75%. Romeo is 30 of 45, and he's at 64.4%. And Malik Heath, who is 4 receptions out of 5 targets, so he's at 60%. Everybody else is under 60% success rate when it comes to receiving. And then you've got one major one that is even under 30% when it comes to success. You've got 3 who are under 30, but one major one. The first one under 30 is Luke Musgrave. You got to kind of give that a pass just because of injuries and all that shit. He's not been on the field. The other one that, is Emmanuel Wilson, that he's not getting the reception, the targets to even mess with that.
And he's a running back, so it's okay kind of thing.
Right. So the major one is Dontavian Wicks. He's at 27.9% success rate. So I know. Oh, I told Mike I was at a friend's today, and he's a heavy smoker, so my lungs are trying to clear out all that shit. But he's at 27.9%, 16 receptions on 43 targets. They still keep going back to him, which is, that's obviously something you want to do. You don't want to just completely take him out of game plans. But that's something that the receiving coaches need to work on with him. I don't know if it's the old drill that they usually do during training camp where they have him stand in front of or off to the side of the jugs machine and put their hands like right at the mouth of the jug machine and just and make them catch the ball from like 5 inches away from the jugs machine. I don't know if that's something they've got to work on with him. I know that's what Devontae did. Devontae's turnaround came because of that work with the jugs machine. But something's got to give with it, because whereas you put it as a stale, that one would definitely be a moldy for me, is the Dontavian Wicks. And I know you said that everybody's kind of piling on him. I've been piling on him for a completely different reason than other people have been piling on him. And Mike, you know this, and anybody who's listened to the show that's know this, or anybody who follows me on socials know this. I've said from the minute that game happened, I want to know what the hell's up going on. Why he only had 1 snap in the whole of preseason. Because we knew this right here was a possibility with him. Because he had issues in college doing the same thing. So why only 1 snap? Now, it was a great snap. It was a great route. It was a great catch. It was all that. But because of what we're seeing now, should have been something that could have been worked on during preseason when they known that was an issue. So this would be one of those things that I would have to sit down with like Matt LaFleur and the wide receiver coaches and say, hey, what gives? Why was there only 1 snap? And now we're having all kinds of problems with his success rate.
Yeah, not to rehash the whole thing, my argument in preseason was I thought it was more important for him to be getting snaps with Love, and if Love isn't playing, like, it's fine. But yeah, like, if it is quote unquote just a concentration thing or whatever, then reps from anyone would have helped. Like, yeah, so it's not going the way that I thought it would, and yeah, like, you just have to get better. Like, there's no if, ands, or buts, or there's nothing special or no smoke and mirrors about it. You just gotta be better than what you've been, and like I said, I do think him having dealt with those kind of struggles, it's a I don't want to say it's a good thing, but it's helpful that it's not like he just started to get the dropsies out of nowhere kind of thing. It's something he's dealt with before, and hopefully he can recalibrate, refocus in and stuff, and get back to it. Did you have a still that you know off the top of your mind that you wanted to get to?
Cornerback play. I would have to say right now, cornerback play. And it's, I know I've said this before in episodes, and I know I'm not an expert by any means. Of course, I've never have played cornerback to save my life, whatever. But I'm seeing stuff on the field differently than some of these other people is. I think Keyshawn's had a rough go at it as a boundary corner in this on this team. Whereas I also think Eric Stokes has been pretty decent compared to what he was last year before all the injuries took its toll on him. I think it's just been Stokes has had a lot of bad luck with his where he's played perfect coverage. It's just the quarterbacks are hitting the right spots and he's not able to make the play on them. But the reason I put cornerback play in the stale is without Jair, somebody has to step up, and nobody in that cornerback room has stepped up enough to do anything for this team. And the times Jair has been out have been times that this defense have looked rough. And I kind of wish that they would have done something during the trade deadline. I didn't figure they were going to go after Greg Joseph or not Greg Joseph, Newsom or whatever, but they could have brought in somebody to at least help out. You know, trade for a Razul type, trade for a guy that needs a change of scenery, whatever. Something's got to give, and it's not the same retreads that we're putting out now. Don't get me wrong, Robert Rochelle has done what he's done, but he's not, obviously, he's not the guy that we need out on the field when your number one corner is gone. What's the guy's name? Hoden. I think I was calling him Hoden. His actual
Haddon, I think. I don't know how to pronounce it. Yeah, I think it's spelled like Haddon.
Yeah, so he's not been somebody that they need. Why we're not seeing anything out of Kalen King, I don't know. You know, maybe they really don't think, even though he had some success in preseason, they don't think he's ready for prime time.
He couldn't tackle by the end of preseason, so I understand why they're a little gun shy with that one.
But my thing is that's why you have safety help too.
Yeah,
You know, if you've got a guy can be a lockdown corner by breaking up passes or making sure that the guy can't make the catch, you can kind of give up the tackling bit when you've got a guy like Xavier McKinney or Evan Williams or Javon Bullard or even Katan Oladapo that can make that tackle. So that's why I put the cornerback play a little bit into the stale side.
All right, yeah, and it for me, yeah, it's a weird one because I'm like, I do think overall it's been stale. I don't put the Jair injuries, or cause I know some people are like, oh, it's so, but I'm like,
They're
injuries
freak
happen.
injuries.
Yeah,
It's
and
not like he's dealing with the same shit over and over again.
Yeah.
It's completely different injuries.
yeah, like honestly, everyone should just be happy that he can still play this season after what I was worried was the worst possible outcome with the one he got in Jacksonville. So I'm choosing to be blissfully happy about that one instead of the opposite. But to me, it's definitely they definitely need to figure something out. And at the same time, I'm kind of like it's the point you brought up where I'm like they should have done more, whether in the off season or at the deadline to like just shore that position up because they just needed more than to be relying on the hope that Eric Stokes would get back to what he was and that Carrington Valentine wouldn't be just the seventh round pick and whatever you're getting out of Nixon and stuff like that. So yeah, it's unfortunate that you're at this point of it, but at this point the thing you can do is burn some sage, some incense, and just hope that Jair is going to stay healthy the rest of the season because That's it. You need that. You need him to be the, and he has been really good this season. I think I don't really care what he's grading out at when he's played on a real field. He's been pretty damn good for the Packers this season. So that's all you can ask for. You need that number one corner to just, and no defensive coordinator is immune to this. Having that number one corner that just having one side of the field answered just makes such a big difference for your whole scheme. And so, yes, I do want to see something more out of the quarterback two spot, but we'll see what they do moving forward because it's going to be, like you said, it's got to be all in-house answers at this point. So that's the bed that they've made, and that's kind of where they're at with this one.
Well,
Yeah,
before we go on, we should have put another one in the fresh, and neither one of us really did. You kind of lumped it in as a whole, but the safety play, Xavier
yeah,
McKinney, Javon Bullard, and Evan Williams have been really lights out back there. I know
yeah,
Javon has struggled a little bit, but they're flipping him from slot
yeah,
to, yeah. But Xavier has been, arguably one of the best free agent signings the Packers have made in a long time.
yeah. And like you said, I know some people are like ragging on Bullard, but he's basically been playing two different positions. He's been flipped, and then he had to flip back because Williams got hurt. And then it's nice on the Evan Williams front. It's nice to see a rookie that got talked up so much in training camp actually play well when he gets on the field, because we've seen that so often. Is like, I mean, the guy they finally cut this year, Royce Newman, was a guy that was forever talked up about in camp, and oh, he fixed this and that, and it's like, nope, it's still the same old guy and stuff like that. So
Polish a
it's,
turd, it's still a turd.
yeah, it's nice to see that he actually is a shiny gem, not just a turd. So no, you're absolutely right. And getting Williams back would make a big difference for what this defense can do down the stretch, because if you're able to account for deep coverage and your cornerback one spot, you can massage the rest of your coverage to account for the rest of your corners, kind of thing. So hopefully everyone is feeling a lot better and healthy coming out of the bye, not hacking up a lung like I am right now.
Or
But
B.
but let's just let that be the turning point to go into the moldy topic. Yeah, what's something that's just been stinking your mind up so far this season?
Every aspect of special teams but one.
The Irish, the luck of the Irish.
The Celtic Cannon has been tremendous, so he should be a fresh two. But obviously, kicking's been a problem, snapping's been a problem. And the holding has been perfect. Whelan has been able to do some matrix ass shit when it comes to snagging the snaps. But I know everybody thinks the godsend of McManus, but he just missed a kick this last game.
Yeah, and looked
And,
completely miffed as to how and why.
and so, and then the whole Narvison situation and everything else. But I like Rich Bisaccia. I think he brings an element to the team that, that attitude to the team that really helps out in a way. But I have to say I'm not typically this guy, but I'm starting to wonder what the Packers are paying him for.
Yeah, it's a rational thought. Like, there's, it's not like it's his first year. It's not his first rodeo or anything like that. This is, who knows what the numbers really are around the league and here, but by all accounts, you hear that he is, if not the one of the top paid special teams coordinator. Plus, he has associate head coaching dibs on his to his title. And yeah, it's like you can't have all that and have your unit be not just that. You can't have all that, have the front office keeping certain players on the roster because their special teams contribution is supposedly so great that it demands a roster spot despite them being a negative or just unplayable player at their listed position. and have your units come up short in so many regards. I understand that like the kicking part of it, it's not, he's, and all accounts are that like Narvison was like a perfect practice player and he had it like figured out in Hudson and on Clark Hinkle Field and stuff like that. So like to that degree, it's like, okay, I can't blame him so much for that, because it's like, on the in the instances where it's like every day of the week leading up to the game, it's like, no, like he's doing it well and stuff. And so like, okay, I can understand that part of it, but like you said, the penalties, insisting on like a Zane Anderson up until this year, what's his face? Dallin Levitt had to be on the roster, even though they've been two of the worst personal protectors on punts that I've seen in a long time. And then just the penalties, like it's like it feels like every time there's anything, forget a positive or a big play on special teams, it's like every play that's even just marginally average or above average, it's like there's a penalty bringing it back. Or you have like guys just biffing the fundamentals of when to fair catch something, dropping a punt or whatever kind of thing. So it's just so many backbreaking issues, and it's just inexcusable for, like you said, this to be the issue and stuff. And like I said, it would be one thing if it was just like mental mistakes by players, but it is so apparent that a lot of these mistakes are from the guys that Bisaccia has like banged the table for. Like I said, Dallin Levitt, who they finally got rid of this offseason, Zane Anderson, like hasn't been that great. More, you've heard his name more often than not because of a mistake. Same goes for excuse me. Same goes for Orzik. You kept the veteran long snapper because blank. Like it's all that kind of stuff. And
Well,
you
and I'm
just
going to say the reason why that I'm really starting to lose my allure with Bisaccia is the simple fact that when he was asked during one of his press conferences, "Are you thinking about making a change at long snapper?" What do you think about the issues at snapping? Oh, well, he snaps hundreds of times during practice and never has an issue, and I never see anything wrong with his snapping. I'm sorry, are you like legally blind? Do you need a new prescription in your glasses? Are you drunk on game day? Are you hitting too many old fashions or something? If my dumbass can sit here and see there's a problem with the snap, you're getting paid a hell of a lot more money than I am to be doing this shit. You should be seeing it too. And if you can't see it on the sideline, get your ass up in the booth and look at it. But that's where I really started losing my allure, because everybody knows there's a problem with the snapping, but Rich Bisaccia.
yeah, and like you said, it's inexcusable at this point. And it's partly on, you can argue that it's partly on like it's partly on Gutekunst for like not bringing in a better player, or just like kind of with Narvison just saying like, that's it, we're done. Like we're not
Well,
going
and
another.
that's the other thing. Gutekunst was so quick to cut Carlson, but he stuck it out with Narvison. He's sticking out with Orsulik. Why are you so quick to cut out Carlson, but you're keeping these other two for so long that they're the bigger issue?
Yeah, and I'm sure to some degree it is the whole like Anders probably was having issues that were getting ironed out, but they were still apparent, struggles in practice and stuff like that, where it appears that, Narvison, everyone, even the like media writers were all to a man saying like, no, like he was perfect in the media portion of practice and stuff like that. But then you get to, and then the coaches are kind of all saying the same thing too. So yeah, it's one of those, it is what it is. But we're not even a fly near the wall for these kind of things. So you wish that you could get answers to these kind of things. And realistically, and I'm going to say it too, like that's really the only Moldy I've got to for this season that's inherent like directly with the Packers because, like I said, everything else looks like it's got a relative answer on roster. Even with the trade of Preston, I do think Rashawn is turning a corner. I do think Lucas, with more snaps, is going to turn a corner and level up. And hopefully, Inagbare will continue because I think Kingsley's been coming on of late too and stuff. And so I think you have answers there. The cornerback room is bordering on like more than concerning. And it's all pending Jair's health and what you get out of him the rest of the season. But its special teams is the only one that really just reeks of moldy on this roster because, like you said, it's there's certain parts of it that are, you know, just kind of inherent. Like you're on the, they say it's a third of the game, but you're on the field much less than a third of the game, and you have these individual handful of moments a game where special teams has to come through. But like you said, it'd be one thing if everyone was perfect in practice and it was just like they just shrank when the lights are bright. But if your coordinator is making comments contrary to the obvious, that's the part where it's like, oh no, like, oh boy, like, what do we do now, kind of thing. So, yeah, it's.
I've got three quick ones before we leave.
Yep.
Three quick ones. Moldy takes. Jordan Love's interceptions. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but it's not more that his interceptions, it's the fan reaction to the interceptions. I'm getting tired of hearing the whole, oh, well, interceptions are no big deal. We're seeing them start to become a big deal with Jordan Love. So that's another Moldy for me. Number 2 and 3 kind of mix in together a little bit. Gold package fans, stop selling your goddamn tickets. I'm tired of hearing more visiting team fans than Packer fans. If you can't make the game, don't fucking renew your tickets. And the last one are the idiot fans that are calling for a dome on Lambeau Field.
Yeah, that last one is just so dumb. Like, to me,
I get it.
Yeah.
This team has looked horrible in the elements for a long time now, but that still doesn't mean that we need to put a dome on
No.
Lambeau.
Like, it's more the who they're doing it against. Like, you can't be getting out elemented by West Coast, like, not just West Coast, because I know the weather gets bad in Seattle, but like California teams or a friggin' dome team that doesn't, why would a dome team practice outdoors and stuff? But yeah, like you can't be getting domed by a dome team because that's just inexcusable. And yeah, it's putting a dome on the Packers isn't gonna, like, you just can't, like, that would be, that would be akin to like finding some, King Tut's tomb and opening it kind of thing and stuff. Like, you just don't do such sacrilegious things to, a vaunted piece of sports royalty. So yeah, other than that, I don't have too much more. We'll go back to having our preview. We'll preview the Bears matchup coming up on. We'll record on Wednesday. Show will be coming out on Thursday, so that'll be, team needs to get its first division win of the season. Right the boat in that regard, and keep the Bears down in the cellar. But until then, please check out the website ohanapackers.org. Please support our initiatives, support the channel by buying merch, but also our 2 initiatives, cancer awareness and troop appreciation. So Joe's got a lot of really cool designs that he's always putting up on there, so check those out. Blog posts and streams of the episodes are on there as well, so check those out on the website. Check us out on our social medias, at Ohana_Packers on Twitter, at Ohana Packers Edition on Instagram, and Ohana Packers Edition on Facebook. Please follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting app. Give us a like and a subscribe. And all of your comments, please give them to us because we just want to provide what you're looking for as content creators. The Packers come out of the bye hoping to be healthy and fresh. We're going to be keeping you posted on their injury reports coming through the week. We're hoping to see a lot of things trending in the upward direction. Hope to see Marshawn Lloyd have his 21-day practice window open because he's been on IR for, he's been eligible for a few weeks at this point. So Packers looking to, I almost said pick up where they left off. No, don't do that. Get off on the right foot coming out of the bye, secure some of these wins, especially these next two would be absolutely massive for Green Bay to lock down. But until then, this is the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. Go Pack Go and aloha.
Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for OPE. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for OPE. You know who.